welcome to another Bob Ross pixel art video. Today we are tackling the Season 10 Episode 1 painting titled Towering Peaks. Instead of using Bob's version as reference, today we are using a version done by Jessie Mason. Please check out her work as it's all great. The details will be in the video description. To begin with, I start rough sketching the major elements of the drawing to make sure the composition ends up looking okay. The major elements of this painting are the mountains, of course, the lake, pine trees on the left side, and the foreground bushes and path. Since this is a sunset drawing, our sky is a gradient of dark purple to bright orange yellow. Beautiful colors in this sunset. The clouds are intended to be coming at the viewer, so I try to make the formations of the clouds near the top of the screen larger while making them smaller as I move towards the horizon. This gives the impression that the clouds near the bottom are very distant. The reflections of the bright orange sunset color on the bottom of the clouds really make them pop. The mountains are the real focal point of this landscape, which makes sense as the title of the painting is Towering Peaks. I start out by finalizing the silhouette and creating the major shapes of the mountain. I try to chop up the mountains into shaded and lit portions, which in the end is going to give us the impression of depth. I add some edge lighting to the higher points of the mountain to indicate the light from the setting sun is bleeding around from behind the structures. Random shapes with sharpish edges are used to try and indicate the little peaks, valleys, and crevices on the face of the mountain. I try not to go into too much detail here since our point of view is pretty far away from the mountains, and we wouldn't really be able to see much detail if they were real and we were standing there. I mention this in a lot of my videos, but I use the preview pane in the lower right a lot when creating pixel art. It's easy to get bogged down in the details of something when you're zoomed in, but it's nice to take a step back from the canvas and see how your work has progressed as a whole. Sometimes ideas that seem to work really well at a zoomed in level don't really mesh with the work as a whole. These foothills are varying saturations of the same color to indicate that we're looking through more atmosphere as the hills get more distant, making them appear lighter in color. And now we have our distant tree line, which outlines the backside of the lake. I'm just trying to indicate the idea of a tree line with single pixel width trees of varying heights. Since these trees also mark the edge of the lake, I make a lighter swath in front of the trees to indicate a shoreline. Next up, we have the pine trees that frame the left side of our composition. Pine trees have always been difficult for me, so I generally try to avoid them, which is not the greatest idea if I'm trying to improve my art skills. Given that these trees are a bit of a bravery test for me. For the silhouette of these trees, I'm trying to keep in mind that branches near the top of the tree are a bit light and will reach for the sky easier than the heavier branches below. I'm also trying to keep a generalized taper of narrow at the top and wider at the bottom. I chose this yellow color as a highlight to indicate some of the low sunlight peeking over the horizon and illuminating the branches. Towards the bottom of the pines, I tried to fill in most gaps through the trees since there would be many branches that would either be coming at or going away from the viewer, so you wouldn't really see through them too much. I decided that the foothills should have some trees popping up at the top of their silhouettes. Next, we move on to the large bush bordering the right side of the canvas. This is a bright yellow bushy thing. I'm not quite sure what this vegetation would be in real life, but it looks at home in this sunset landscape due to its yellowish hue. For the path, I try to create some random horizontal strokes to indicate a little bit of bumpiness that could either be rocks or dirt mounds. These bright foreground bushes were a lot of fun to make. I used some of the brightest colors in the palette from the sky and tried to work them into an almost spiky bush texture. For some of these more muted bushes, I use the colors of the midground trees and foothills. I tried to keep in mind where the light would be showing on the bushes as well as where the shadows might be falling, while still trying to keep the spiky bush-like texture. This is a bit of a time-consuming process, but the end result is really satisfying in my opinion, especially when you step back and take a look at the canvas as a whole. Finally, it's time for one of the parts that still feels like magic to me. We're going to create a new layer with lower opacity, copy, flip, and paste the background layers above the lake. This gives us a nice, convincing reflection on the surface of the water. It's a bit of a cheap trick, but I don't feel bad using it every time. And here we have the finished piece. Thank you, Jessie, for letting me use your art as reference. I hope you all had a good time, and I'll see you next time. Good night.